Welcome, folks. Let's talk about the state of the left, where satire writes itself, reality looks like rejected SNL sketches, and Democrats are somehow still shocked that actions have consequences. We've reached peak political cosplay, where every disagreement is a threat, every mean tweet is a war crime, and every camera-hungry congresswoman suddenly thinks she's the star of Orange is a New Woke. Today, we're diving into the latest brain rot from Representative Jasmine Crockett and the ghost of CNN's past, Jim Acosta, who genuinely believes Trump is plotting to arrest Crockett. Yes, the same Trump whose return to office has triggered more staged panic attacks on the left than a vegan at a Texas barbecue. But let's be honest, if Trump did actually want to arrest Jasmine Crockett for whatever strange reason, it'd probably be for impersonating a serious legislator. Instead, she's out here acting like a martyr while handing the GOP more talking points than a Kamala speechwriter on mushrooms. So buckle up. We're about to unpack the political theater, victim cosplay, and delusions of grandeur that pass for leadership on the modern left today.
Let me ask you about the ICE stuff, because, I mean, I have been going off on this on my show. To me, it's not America when ICE agents can show up in masks, sweep people up off the street, send them out of the country without due process, put them in these facilities, and we don't even know what's happening inside these facilities. So, of course, it makes sense that members of Congress would want to go visit one of these ICE facilities and say, okay, what's going on here? We're members of Congress. We represent the people. We want to know what's going on here. And then there's this scuffle where they're giving these members of Congress a hard time. And I'm worried about folks like yourself, Congresswoman, because I have to assume that, you know, of course they would like to arrest you and some of the others who are more outspoken in the House. That's just me thinking that.
No, you're absolutely right. It's interesting because my deputy chief, who's quite young, still has his grandmother, who he calls this particular one Nene. And so I was having to go to El Paso. After I got done in D.C., I had to go to El Paso to testify in federal court as relates to the redistricting that was done in 2020 in the state of Texas. Yeah. And his grandmother did not know why we were going to El Paso, but she thought we were going to a detention facility. That I don't know about Jasmine going, because you know they want to lock her up and they probably going to grab her and throw her in too. And so, you know, it is sad that people are fearful and that they are looking at people like me and really scared, because they know that there is a target on my back when you have the president of the United States who consistently drops my name and gets...
These people are trapped in a perpetual victim complex. Nobody's trying to arrest Jasmine Crockett, let's be honest for a second. But this clip makes one thing painfully clear. It's no longer just about one attention-hungry congresswoman and a washed-up CNN host fantasizing about political imprisonment. It's about an entire political class hooked on the theater of persecution and a media ecosystem built to sell that drama. Jim Acosta, once CNN's frontman for performative outrage, now sits across from Crockett and suggests, without evidence or any sort of logic-based thought, that President Trump wants to arrest her. Crockett doesn't push back. No, she actually leans in, affirms it, and spins the tale about having a target on her back as if Trump is operating a gulag instead of a government. This isn't commentary. It's political fan fiction, pure and simple. But more importantly, it's a textbook example of how the modern left sustains its moral authority, not by leading, not by solving real problems, but by playing the victim louder than everyone else in the room. This is the same party that controls most of our universities, by the way, most of the corporate media, the entertainment industry, and every major cultural institution, but still wants you to believe they're one step away from being thrown into a prison camp. The fantasy of oppression gives them power. It justifies their awful policies. It silences opposition, and it builds brands, because nothing builds a following like pretending you're moments away from martyrdom. But here's a deeper issue. This narrative reveals just how empty modern progressive politics has become. Crockett doesn't talk about policy outcomes. She doesn't defend her ideas. She doesn't explain how her leadership helps the people she claims to represent. She talks about herself, about how scared people are from her. This isn't public service, by the way. It's narcissism wrapped in civil rights cosplay. And Acosta, he just plays along. He gives the audience a script they're used to. Evil ICE agents, masked men, people swept up off the streets, Congress members denied entry like it's a dystopian thriller. No mention of the legal process, no nuance whatsoever, just emotional manipulation, fear-mongering, and a complete detachment from the constitutional roles and responsibilities of the institutions they pretend to defend. The sad truth is, the left needs the illusion of persecution to survive. If they ever had to govern without it, if they had to defend their policies on merit, it would collapse, and it is collapsing. Because when you can only hide the failures of open borders, collapsing cities, and economic mismanagement behind some crocodile tears, eventually the country notices. So to just be absolutely clear, Jasmine Crockett is in no danger whatsoever. She's not getting arrested. She's just in danger of being irrelevant. But as long as there's a camera, a headline, or a sympathetic host willing to ask leading questions, she'll just play the part. And the rest of us, well, we're just supposed to clap along like seals, like it's bravery instead of just branding. And speaking of washed up CNN anchors, Chris Cuomo is out here proving that old habits do indeed die hard.
The division is almost exclusively manufactured. We are fighting over culture issues and controversies that are completely made up. We divide this country over a single homicide of somebody, and it's absolutely wrong. What happened to Laken Riley is horrible. It's one too many, any way you want to look at it. But it is also an artificial issue. We have crime issues in this country. Our homicide problem is not from illegal immigrants, okay? Yeah, but there shouldn't be any. There shouldn't be any of a lot of things that we haven't made a top priority.
Chris Cuomo provides a kind of in-depth insight you can only get from a block of cheese, aged, soft around the edges, and completely detached from reality. In this recent clip, Cuomo dismissed the brutal murder of Laken Riley by an illegal immigrant as a manufactured issue, complaining that we're dividing the country over a single homicide, as if the death of a young woman at the hands of someone who shouldn't have even been in the country in the first place is just a political inconvenience. This isn't commentary, by the way. It's moral rot disguised as neutrality. And let's be clear. The murder of Laken Riley is not an isolated outrage. It's a symbol of a systemic failure, one that stems from open border policies championed by Democrats, corporate nonprofits, and bureaucrats who see illegal immigration as a virtue signal instead of a security issue. When someone enters a country illegally and goes on to kill a U.S. citizen, it's not the same as an American committing a crime. It's a failure of sovereignty. And when a media figure like Cuomo tells you that this kind of death is just artificial, what he's really saying is that your safety, your borders, and your voice are less important than his narrative. This is the same elite class, by the way, that tells you identity is sacred, unless your identity is American. The same media that treats every offense against a protected group as a national trauma suddenly finds itself unmoved by the murder of a young woman if it doesn't serve the right ideological script. The same institutions that demand empathy seem to run out of it the moment the victim isn't useful to their agenda. Cuomo's logic reveals the deeper poison in our political discourse, the belief that acknowledging real harm caused by bad policy is somehow divisive or xenophobic. It's not. It's called accountability. But the left has spent so many years turning every issue into a culture war landmine that they can't tell the difference between legitimate public outrage and what they call manufactured division. Of course, it's only manufactured when it threatens their moral monopoly. And by the way, this kind of dismissal isn't just insulting, it's dangerous. It gaslights the public into silence. It trains us to tolerate dysfunction, and it erodes any meaningful distinction between citizens and non-citizens, between rule of law and selective enforcement. If your daughter is murdered by someone who never should have been in America, that's not an abstraction. That's not symbolic. That is very, very real. And it should never be minimized by a man paid to moralize as an enlightened centrist in a television studio. The truth is, the cultural left is losing ground and fast. So they cling to these tired narratives about manufactured outrage to delegitimize the rising anger across the country. But that anger is very real, and it's very justified as well, because the people paying the price for these policies aren't pundits or politicians out in their cozy, gated communities. They're ordinary Americans who deserve better than condescension disguised as commentary. But what makes Cuomo's comments especially insidious is the way he feigns self-awareness while continuing to do the exact damage he pretends to critique. He lumps himself in with the media and the parties as if acknowledging the problem somehow absolves him from it. But it's all performative. This is the same guy who spent years at CNN stoking partisan outrage, spinning false narratives, all with theatrical monologues and choreographed indignation, only to rebrand himself recently as the truth-seeking centrist now that he's on the second-tier network. It's not about integrity at all. It's about reinvention. Cuomo doesn't operate on principle, he operates on paycheck. He'll say whatever keeps the lights on and the contracts coming, even if that means downplaying the death of an innocent American as a manufactured issue. There's no moral compass with this man, just a PR strategy wrapped in a smug detachment. And to be absolutely clear, the country isn't being divided by caring about justice. It's being divided by pretending justice doesn't matter. And speaking of bastardizing justice, Elon Musk recently stepped down from his role on DOGE, and since then, Democrats have been strategizing openly on MSDNC and other networks on how they're going to circle the wagons and continue their warfare against Elon because he dared to hold them and their pet projects accountable.
And when you go back to the Elon Musk story, it's the same story. He didn't just leave. He's not just slipping out of Washington. He was chased out of Washington by democracy, by people saying no, by people protesting so much around his cars and dealerships that he lost billions and billions of dollars, by people raising their voices, by people filing lawsuits. And by the way, Donald Trump was saying, I think he wrote, he will always be with us. That's something the Rev might say in a eulogy for someone. So he will always be with us.
This is what happens when elite smugness meets historical illiteracy. The left is actually claiming Elon Musk was chased out of Washington by democracy, like some kind of digital age pharaoh fleeing righteous revolt. In reality, Musk's 130-day stint as a special government employee ended exactly as planned. No mob, no exile, no pitchforks, just a contract that expired. But that doesn't matter to people like Anand because facts don't fuel the narrative, feelings do. What matters to him and his ilk is preserving the illusion that the left still owns moral authority over anything, even if they have to fabricate a persecution story to do it. Now, this moment reveals a lot about the state of the liberal media. Their desperate need to turn disagreement into martyrdom, policy into panic, and ordinary transitions of government service into victories for the people. But look closer, and the truth is actually harder to swallow. The left didn't chase out Elon Musk. They targeted him, vilified him, and when that didn't work, they tried to sabotage him through proxy. They firebombed Tesla dealerships. They encouraged lawsuits. They treated his company and by extension its owners not as a private business, but as an ideological enemy. Why? Because he dared to challenge their monopoly on speech, on power, and on narrative. This isn't democracy, by the way. It's pure tantrum politics. A class of legacy media elites, irrelevant academics, and institutional ideologues who can't stand that the cultural winds are shifting against them. Elon didn't get chased out of Washington. He was invited in to fix a dysfunction they caused. And that terrifies them because if he succeeds, it proves just how bloated, broken, and unnecessary their entire worldview has become. So instead, they craft bedtime stories for MSDNC audiences, tales of the people rising up while ignoring the violent, vindictive behavior they excuse in the name of justice. So what we're witnessing isn't just a distortion of reality, it's an unraveling of a cultural empire. The left's grip on media, identity, and discourse is no longer secured by credibility because they have none. It's propped up by fear, fiction, and bad faith framing. And when that fails, well, they torch Teslas and call it activism. And by the way, I don't think it's ever been more clear that the actual threat to democracy isn't Elon Musk. It's the people who lie about him, spin failure into moral victory, and keep trying to drag this country into a culture war they no longer have the tools to win. And it's never been more evident that Democrat politics is purely based on Marxist grievance and revenge.
DOGE was in there.
And he didn't take those servers with him.
The servers, I don't think, have left the White House. And so what are Democrats going to do about the data? Are you all going to follow up on this? What's your take on Elon Musk being done? because I just think he's finished. He's just finished what he was doing. Actually, he's finished. He's not done because they've still got the data.
Yeah, I heard he's on some image repair tour. I think the best way for him to repair his image is to reverse all the damage he did to our government, to the American people. And yeah, those servers are a big issue. We want to continue to investigate that. And certainly, I think some crimes may have been committed over the past 3 or 4 months, and they are going to come to light one way or another. We're going to come to light, even if it takes us getting into power again. But we will subpoena people and find out.
Democrats keep proving they're pettier than a child going through their terrible twos, except in this case, the tantrum comes with subpoenas. The latest meltdown, well, Representative Subramanyam openly saying that if Democrats retake power for some random reason, they plan to investigate Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, not because of any evidence of wrongdoing, but because crimes may have been committed. That's right. We've now entered the era of pre-crime politics, where merely associating with the wrong ideas that your party disagrees with, or worse, disrupting the bureaucratic gravy train, is grounds for retroactive prosecution. The server conspiracy theory is just the excuse. The real crime Musk committed was pulling back the curtain on how bloated, slow, and corrupt the modern administrative state has become. By the way, it's never been more evident that this isn't even oversight. It's retribution. It's the same script we've seen play out for years. If you can't win the argument, criminalize your opponent. If you can't beat the policy, bury it under investigations. It's lawfare, pure and simple, weaponized process, and the ideological enforcement disguised as accountability. And it shows just how terrified the left is of losing control over the levers of power they once treated as permanent property. Elon Musk represents a direct threat to the technocratic caste that dominates Washington. He doesn't just innovate, he exposes how obsolete they've become. The creation of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, was more than symbolic. It challenged the very premise that the federal government needs to be this slow, this bloated, and this protected from disruption. And for that, the left is coming after him. They're not afraid he broke the law. They're afraid he broke the illusion that the swamp is necessary, that its inefficiencies are accidental, and that the people running it are the adults in the room. And let's not forget, these are the same Democrats who turned a blind eye when activists firebombed Tesla dealerships, who mocked private Tesla owners for driving fascist cars, and who celebrated Musk's financial losses as moral victories. It's never been about the law. It's been about obedience to the leftist Marxist orthodoxy. Elon Musk just stopped obeying, so now they must destroy him. And this moment tells us everything we need to know about where we are as a country. The left no longer builds. It censors, it litigates, it punishes, it destroys. It doesn't innovate, it just investigates perpetually until it's satisfied with the destruction resulting from that investigation. And if Republicans don't take this seriously, if we just sit back and let these ideological purges go unchallenged, we won't just lose the fight, we'll lose the country to people who believe disagreement is criminal and dissent is treason. So the question isn't just what they'll do to Elon Musk, it's what they'll do to anyone who dares to interrupt the machinery of their control. How many more may have been committed investigations will it take before we stop mistaking partisan vengeance for justice? How long will we keep pretending that the people who built this mess are the ones qualified to clean it up? This isn't just about one man or one department. It's about a ruling class that sees scrutiny as heresy and reform as sabotage. If they can frame innovation as criminal and treat disagreement as a threat, what's left of the republic? Ask yourself, who really benefits when the truth becomes dangerous and obedience becomes the only safe option? Because if you're waiting for permission to think for yourself, you're already on trial. You just haven't been subpoenaed yet. Anyway, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Have a terrific day.